Having a second look at something can really change a lot. Positive impressions can flip pretty quickly and vice versa. And then there are those reaffirmations where a second look just cements the way you felt the first time around. If you haven't guessed, that's exactly what's going on with the Kia Seltos, which is aging pretty well after a couple years on the market. It has its imperfections, that much is for sure, but in an expanding segment of subcompacts, the Seltos delivers value in a way few others can. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. Look, I know this is something that's talked about a lot with both Hyundai and Kia, but this brand really has made some serious strides over the years. And I personally used to drive a Kia Forte hatchback, a car that I liked, but it was definitely a 2013 Kia. Those of you who know the brand know exactly what I'm talking about. A lot of the materials inside, they were a little substandard. Just the general drive, it was close. I really did like the car. It's just nowhere near as good as it is now. This product is vastly improved, and I would even say that this fits into Kia's wheelhouse better than the Telluride or maybe even the Stinger. Those are both very good vehicles, but this just kind of suits the brand better for one big reason, and that really is value. This thing is a value leader in the segment, and that includes this SX Turbo trim. This is the top trim, but it's barely more than 35 grand before tax, including a $250 charge for the paint of this one, which is pretty understated. It's called like cloud gray or something, kind of fitting for a day like today, but that's cheap. I don't care how you cut it, especially when you take a look at all the stuff I have in here. I've got heated and ventilated front seats, heated rear seats, I've got a head-up display. It's very rare that you would get all of that stuff in this subcompact crossover segment. Some others offer some of that stuff, but not all of it together. And that really is what sets the Seltos apart from what is an expanding segment. Now, something else you get with this top trim, as well as the EX Premium, is this massive 10.25-inch touchscreen with both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto connections. No, they aren't wireless, which is at least a bit of a sticking point because some others in the segment do offer that. The other thing, no USB-C ports, only USB-A. I personally don't mind that much, but I understand, technology is one of those things that it's both appealing and it can be very frustrating if you use USB-C because you have the latest iPhone and then this thing has a USB-A port, so you need to get yourself a new cable. I mean, what's 20 bucks in the grand scheme of things when you're shopping for a $35,000 vehicle? But that is something to keep in mind. The other thing, usually Kia and Hyundai's infotainment system is one of the best on the market, and that's still true for the interface itself, though I do have to say, with this one I'm driving in particular, I've noticed some serious lag in response to my inputs. Not with CarPlay, but with the base infotainment interface. I'm willing to chalk it up to the need for a software update because I've never experienced that before, but it did stand out to me this week as soon as I picked it up, and it's still doing it today. So keep that in mind, keep it up to date. Now, something else you get with this top trim is a full suite of advanced driver assistance and safety aids. So you got forward collision warning, pedestrian detection, blind spot monitoring with rear cross traffic alert, lane keep assist, lane departure warning, highway driving assist, adaptive cruise control. It's all very cool. One thing I do want to note though, something that I talked about in my Hyundai Ioniq 5 review. That EV, very cool, but one thing it was missing was a dedicated lane keep assist button. It had the highway driving assist button on the steering wheel, which this one does too. But what it didn't have that Kia and Hyundai usually use is a separate lane keep assist button down here by my left knee. Just wanted to point that out. It is here. I really like this setup better because that means you can control one or the other. It's your choice. I really like that you can do that with the Ioniq 5, and I'm pretty sure with the new EV from Kia, which is twinned with that Ioniq 5, the EV6, you have to activate lane keep assist separately through the infotainment screen. Just a side note, really do like that you can do it separately. But one thing I don't like, those advanced driver aids, they're not standard. And if you take a look at just about any other major competitor to this, you get a lot more lower down in the lineup. We are arranging a comparison with the Toyota Corolla Cross, and that gets a whole whack of stuff right from the cheapest trim. This one, the base version, only gets blind spot monitoring with rear cross traffic alert. You got to step up to the EX trim if you want to get stuff like forward collision warning with auto emergency braking. That is a major disappointment to me. Now, the EX Premium and this SX Turbo, those both get the full suite of driver aids, but I really think Kia does need to do better as far as giving you that stuff in cheaper trims, especially because so many others are doing it, and especially because it just makes a lot of sense. Safety is paramount. I don't care what brand, I don't care who you are. That stuff matters more than touchscreen infotainment, phone connections, any of that stuff. So Kia really does need to step it up there, but the stuff does work well in the trims that have it. Now, something else to keep in mind that is pretty common for this segment, the base trim does not have standard all-wheel drive. You do have to pay a couple grand more to get the LX trim with all-wheel drive, but then the EX Premium, and this SX Turbo all feature standard all-wheel drive. But something else to note is you do have to go all the way up to the top of the lineup if you want the turbo motor under the hood of this thing, and I would highly recommend checking it out at the very least. It's not that it's a spectacular engine, though I do like it quite a bit. It doesn't make this thing a performer like that new Hyundai Kona N, but it just gives you the pep that you need. It makes 175 horsepower, 195 pound-feet of torque. All of that comes online at just 1,500 RPM. And that means when you get your foot into it, it actually gets up and goes really nicely. Now, the rest of the lineup uses a 2-liter 4-cylinder. It makes 147 horsepower and 132 pound-feet of torque. That one is paired with an automatic continuously variable transmission. This one has a 7-speed dual clutch automatic, and I do have to say, it's not all that great. Now, some of it really is symptomatic of DCTs in general. They just have this really kind of shuddering and sputtering sensation really low down when you get rolling, especially if you're not applying much throttle. Let's say you're rolling away from a stop. You can really feel it almost wants to stall. And the big one for me is when I'm pulling out of my parking garage. It's got that ramp coming up, and every time, without fail, it really needs my foot to give it just a little more throttle in order to actually make its way up the hill. It's kind of disconcerting no matter how many times I do it. It just feels like something's wrong. So if it's your first time driving a dual clutch, definitely keep that in mind. You're going to notice it, and it does seem to stand out a little more here than in other DCTs I have used. But for the most part, the powertrain works really well. Shuffles that torque around where you need it, when you need it. It's also got a button here so you can lock it in to all-wheel drive because it does prioritize the front wheels in the name of efficiency. Now, that other powertrain might sound pretty gutless, but in my experience, it's perfectly fine. No, it's not exciting, but it gets the job done. It's a little noisy, but what do you expect? That's mostly the CVT's fault. Again, this one is the way to go if you want to feel like it's got enough guts to do what it needs when you want it to without delay. You don't need to plan passes or merges because all of that turbocharged torque is right there. Though I do have to say, that engine, well, it is more efficient. I think it's good. Officially with all-wheel drive, it's good for 8.2 liters per 100 kilometers. If you go with the front-wheel drive one, that's like 7.7. This turbo motor, well, it's good for 8.7 liters per 100, which is still competitive for the segment. It's just not all that impressive. But I do have to say, the Seltos has consistently been an overachiever, and that's been the case this week too. I went for my evaluation drive the other day. It's the same one I always tell you guys about. It's give or take 200 kilometers depending on where I'm leaving from. It covers city, rural, highway drives. It's amazing because it really gives me a nice snapshot of the vehicle in general. It's a nice way to kick off my test week. And when I did that, I burned 7.7 liters per 100 kilometers. So the same that the front wheel drive version is rated for. I'm very impressed. The same thing happened all the way back when I first tested the Seltos. So it's not a fluke. It really does seem, whether it's underrated or it's just very easy to drive it efficiently. Either way, that is something to keep in mind. if fuel economy is a concern of yours, don't be too scared by that number, because it is possible to do better in this reasonably sized subcompact crossover. So what else does the Seltos have going for it? Space. There is a ton of it here. Now, there's obviously a lot of headroom based on the height. I can sit in both rows comfortably. The same goes for leg room. I can do the proverbial sit behind myself test with plenty of room. This isn't even the biggest entry in the segment. That title belongs to the Volkswagen Taos, but all things considered, I think they made a really great use of what's a small footprint overall. But it's not like they prioritize passenger room over cargo room. There's a ton of that too. There's 750 liters behind the second row and almost 1,800 with them folded. That is plenty of space for your stuff. It also makes a pretty good case for why the shift away from cars towards crossovers maybe isn't so bad after all. Now, one area you might say, styling. This thing doesn't do a ton to stand out, but I actually think that's okay. And it has enough cues to kind of stand out without going over the top. I really do get big third-gen Subaru Forester vibes with the overall shape. It's just kind of shrunken down, and then there are a few accents here and there. It's obviously understated, but I really like the way these roof rails kind of open up at the end. It looks cool. It's also functional, because let's say you want to tie a kayak to your roof. Well, you have the ropes down the front, and then you can rope them off on the back with a couple of crossbars on top, and you are good to go. All things considered, I kind of dig the way this thing looks. Now, really, there isn't much new for 2022, and that's really because Kia didn't have to do much. This thing's only been around for a couple years, and it's still really good. So the badge is new because Kia upgraded to that kind of cool, but also kind of weird one. It's a bit of an adjustment to get used to it. It kind of looks more like a K and an N to me anyways, a backwards N, kind of weird. But anyways, that's new. And then in here, in the SX Turbo trim, you get this D-shaped steering wheel, kind of sporty, I guess, a little bit of a flat bottom going on. But the bigger one, this burgundy upholstery. You can't get it with every exterior color, which is a good thing because there's still some weird ones that would look very odd paired with this. But most of the more neutral colors, you can get this burgundy faux leather upholstery that doesn't feel all that nice, but it looks amazing. And it really does address one of my big complaints about the Seltos, is that the interior was kind of boring. So I really like this splash of still subtle color. It just really does liven the space up a bit. The other thing I do really like that continues here, these really cool kind of parametric design speaker covers. I was having a conversation with a friend earlier this week about the Seltos, and he said that his complaint about it had to do with some of the materials feeling cheap. And you know, I do agree, but then again, it's better than Kia used to be, and it's also about the same as anything else in the segment. And you know, a lot of the high-touch materials, well, they have made them a little bit softer so they don't stand out quite as much. Yeah, the dash, it is kind of cheap plastic, but otherwise, not too much to complain about in here. And again, the burgundy really is the way to go, in my opinion. Makes it look super cool. You can only get it in the SX Turbo trim. The rest of them, you're stuck with black. Most trims do get faux leather as well, though. That's kind of cool. Most trims also get heated seats up front. I think they all do. A heated steering wheel comes in at the EX trim. The EX Premium also gets the heated and ventilated front seats and the heated rear one, so there's lots of good stuff to go around here. Last note about these seats, they are a little firm and flat. Not the most comfortable out there. The same goes for the ride, but it's less of a criticism. It just feels a little bit rigid, but it does feel kind of like an SUV. I think that's what Kia was going for here. Suspension damping, it is a little on the firm side, but it does a nice job of absorbing road imperfections, especially the faster you go. They just don't stand out all that much. I do like that. Something else I really like, the steering. It really feels like it's connected to the front wheels. That part is great, especially with more than a few degrees of input. You can actually feel that it's connected to the wheels, that they're responding to what you're doing, and that is great to see. And then same with everything else. Tons of logical controls, big buttons, boldly labeled, knobs for volume and tune. I mean, it doesn't get much better in here. It's just as user-friendly as any other Kia, and that really has been this brand's mission for so long. And it's good to see that still here with its best product and its best value on the market. To recap, I like how spacious the Seltos is, the top trim's burgundy interior, and the good value it delivers. I don't like the clunky transmission that comes with the turbo motor and the limited advanced safety gear lower in the lineup. Look, the Seltos is not perfect, and I'm not here to tell you it is. Some in the segment do better in certain areas, like the Subaru Crosstrek's ride quality or the Honda HR-V's interior flexibility. But with the Seltos, it's about the totality of the package. This remains an outstanding entry in an expanding segment with a clear emphasis on value. Kia really does need to do better with the advanced safety stuff lower in the lineup. That is unquestionable. But as far as across the board affordability goes, the Seltos is still hard to argue with.